Do you want to know how a comic book gets from script to finished artwork? In this video, I interviewed Chris Condon, the writer of the successful Image Comics series That Texas Blood, illustrated by Jacob Phillips, son of the famous Sean Phillips. Interestingly, Chris got his start as a screenwriter and originally wrote That Texas Blood as a movie script. However, Chris decided that a comic book was the better way to start. In fact, Chris showed me how a page from issue 1 went from screenplay to comic book script to final artwork. If you would like to download a high-resolution PDF version of the graphic I have on screen right now, then simply sign up for Chris's Patreon. The link is in the description below. But that's not all. In this interview, Chris also described the thought process behind other major moments from That Texas Blood. Warning, there will be spoilers. And even discussed the covers. Yes, you're going to get all this and more behind the scenes information from this video. By the way, if you're interested in checking out That Texas Blood, then you're in luck because the next story arc is due out in comic book stores soon. You can find the pre-order link in the description below. Without further ado, here is my interview with Chris Condon.
I'm very lucky to be where I am right now in terms of having a book published and having it be as successful as it is, and that all comes down to our readers and our fans. And so, thank you to you for buying our book and reading our book, and to all the readers out there. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now without you guys. So this is a page from the first issue of That Texas Blood, which is essentially a one-shot story. It's essentially a day in the life of Sheriff Joe Bob Coates, who is the sheriff in this small Texas county in the west coast, or the western border of Texas. It's a fictional county. We made it up. But it's essentially, this is a scene where he gets a call in from this couple that there is a rattlesnake, and Vic, the man with the cowboy hat, that refuses to take care of it. So they call in Joe Bob. It's like that's sort of a small town vibe. That's the point of the vignette. Is essentially it's Joe Bob having to go in and do something that he's not necessarily isn't necessarily the job for sheriffs in other counties. So that was essentially the point of it, was to say how small of a county this is, that everybody knows him. And they're able to call him up and, hey, can you, basically, can you lift that jar on my refrigerator? Or something like that. So that was essentially, that's the vignette.
If you want me to zoom in or anything, that's totally cool.
Sure.
But would you mind walking us through this a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the screenplay, I don't give too many screen directions. I do on the final moment, I say angle on, because I just felt like that was a necessary punctuation for the scene. However, throughout the rest of the page, I don't give screen directions, so it's very much just up to the reader to sort of follow along and just create in their mind what the camera angles are going to be. I have in my mind's eye what it's going to be. So that's a big part of the adaptation process in terms of turning it into a comic script, is going through and figuring out what those camera angles are for you as a writer. So for example, in the first panel in the comic script, I say wide and Joe Bob is in the shot. However, when you look at Jacob's drawing of the panel, he has omitted Joe Bob.
Yeah,
which is an interesting choice, but it is not needed, especially since we see him in the three panels that are directly below that. So that's something I think is really interesting about this first panel, is Jacob's choice of omitting Joe Bob. It just doesn't feel he needs it, and I agree with the choice. It's a great choice. There's also certain omissions of sound effects that he just didn't feel were needed. I added, and here's the thing, is every single comic script that I send to Jacob, I put in, change whatever you need to change. Sound effects are all up in the air because I don't know what the perfect sound is for something, or if it works or if it doesn't work. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So that's one thing that I think is really interesting about that first panel, is that he's missing that character of Joe Bob.
I think that was like a great breakdown of the first panel. So here we have the two townsfolk just trying to boss him around. And then
just real quick, you mentioned that you don't see the snake. So where that came from was essentially I didn't think I would want to shoot a snake when we were originally going to do this as a short film. I didn't want to have to wrangle a snake. We could do it with sound effects. That was the idea, was that we could have the snake be there in the movie but not actually on the set. And it just worked that way for the comic script. I thought that it ended up just working really well for the comic in general. It's an interesting way to show it. I feel like some other comics might show the thing in close up or whatever. We decided not to show it.
I like it. It's very Jawsy. You never see it. See it until you need to see it, and you don't need to see it. It's very, very Alfred Hitchcocky. Just, you don't need to see it, so don't put it in there. I like. Yeah. Well, I like it. I just like the way it plays out. Anyway, rudely interrupted you. So basically, he leaves Joe Bob out of this shot, leaves the hissing out of this shot, and then we get to this.
Right. So also, I didn't remember this, but apparently I also have the second panel as close. Joe Bob over his shoulder. He does a reverse from over Karen's shoulder. So again, that's another sort of change, which again, an interesting change. It's sort of, you don't know exactly how it's going to look when you're writing it, so you can write. Which is why I always, like I said, I always start off my scripts for Jacob with change whatever you need to. Because I know that whatever I write doesn't necessarily work. But again, most of the time, we end up doing fine. So, but yeah, so this is a case where he, saw this and said, okay, this would work better this way. And so he fiddled with it. And I think that it works very well. You still get the same effect. You have Joe Bob looking over his shoulder still. It's a slightly different angle than what I had written. For panel 3, it's 3, 4, and 5 are all the same exact angle. They're very much what I had written, which is great. But yeah, it's very much just what I had written. In terms of what he portrayed in the panel. And then also, again, panel 6 and 7, we see very much what I had written, aside from he decided to ditch both of the sound effects, both the hissing, ceasing, and the shing. The action itself took care of it. Which is another interesting thing. So Jacob comes from obviously a comic book artist family. His father's Sean Phillips, so he's very much in that world. So he very much knows how a comic panel flows, panel to panel. So he knew that I didn't need those sound effects there, and it works perfectly without them. What was it? Yeah, in that panel he omitted it.
He drew it, he inked it, he colored it, and he lettered it.
Yeah, there are certain circumstances where I know that he just forgets to do stuff, but it works anyway. So then we talk about it, and we're like, well, we don't need it, so it works well. But I'm assuming that this is a case where it worked without it. You get the action in the background is blank, which is a great touch. Great touch. They're no longer in the background. It's just it amplifies the action, right? It's like when you watch a cartoon, they will insert a red like blur in there just to make the action feel like an explosion. It feels like that, and he does this throughout the first 6 issues in the comic. and he continues doing it through 7, 8, and 9. We're doing, so the next story arc is going to be a 6-issue story arc, and he continues doing it throughout. So that's sort of that Texas blood staple going forward. Yeah, and then again, he sort of messed around again with Joe Bob's stance. So instead of having his hands on his hips like I have written, he puts his hands crossed over his chest, which works perfectly fine. I love that Vic is framed within the handle.
Oh, I didn't notice
the
that.
shovel. And yeah, and then again, precisely what I had written: a Dutch angle, low, wide angle on Karen and Vic, which works very well for what that is. That may have been why he decided to do the first panel that way, because it's essentially a mirror image. Which he's great for doing those sorts of things and noticing those sorts of things for issues 2 through 6. Issue 6, I had ended on a black page with just one single caption on it, and Jacob messaged me right not too far before we were actually due to go to print and said, "Hey, I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we did a landscape shot like we did at the beginning of issue 1 to make it a wraparound?" And I said, "Yeah, that's a great idea." So we did that. So yeah, so very much that's like the main thing that I want to say, is that it's not just it's not just the writer writing whatever you're seeing. It's very much the artist and the writer collaborating. So and Jacob, I couldn't find a better collaborator than Jacob. I think that you can see from the comic script to the final page, he's doing me a service.
He's definitely got it. These people feel so lifelike, just really just genuine, just everyday people.
So Vic, who is the man with the eye patch, is based off of a man who lives in Marfa, Texas. His name is Ty Mitchell. He owns a bar called The Lost Horse, which lent its name to the Lost Soul in issues 2 through 6. So I mentioned before that I have friends who live in Texas. They're from Fort Davis, which is right next to Marfa, Texas. And so I have been around these people, and I've sort of taken notes as to who I think is visually interesting. And so Jacob will, he'll either ask if I have anybody in mind, or I will write it into the script, or sometimes I'll even put pictures into the script. I did that a lot going forward into issues 7 through 12. Started putting in screenshots and things so that he has a reference. Actually, would have been an interesting page to look at as well would be the in issue 3, I think there's a very much a North by Northwest reference.
Sure.
Essentially, what I said to Jacob is, this is widescreen. This is North by Northwest. You're in the desert. We want to make him look isolated, right? So that's very much what we had gone into it anticipating. But the way that he had done it was so perfect that a couple readers, we have our email on the back of each issue. A couple readers had emailed and said, this felt like North by Northwest, the great Hitchcock movie. And I had to tell them this was exactly what we wanted. But it definitely, if it's nice to have people actually to get what you're doing, because nothing's worse than them emailing you and going, "Oh, is this what this means?" And you're like, "No, it means that." So it's very nice that people are getting things that we're putting out there. But yeah, this little scene is a very cinematic scene, I feel like. But again, I come from a cinematic background of just absorbing movies and writing movies and shooting my own little short films. Hopefully it's not over. Hopefully I'll be able to do it again someday. But Jacob also comes from a very cinematic background. He also loves movies. I feel like a lot of the great comic book artists and writers out there do love movies. It's very much hand in hand with comics for us because they are very much brothers in terms of the mediums. Comic books have always been adapted into film and television, and there's a reason for it, because they're essentially storyboards. So they're very much intertwined, and so we definitely pay homage to film in our comic. But yeah, I mean, I've told Jacob this a million times. There's also panels in this particular arc that I reference Darwin Cook's Parker series, which is one of my all-time favorite comic book series. So we're very much grounded in our inspirations, and we keep pulling from them. Very, very, very much on our sleeves about what influences us.
I thought this shot was great. You could just feel the loneliness of this shot. Let me go to 2-page view, because this would be the one on the page on this is the is this the correct layout? This is the even number. This is the odd number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So then we flip over, and now what's going on here? Just to give like some context to the viewers, what we got going on here.
So Randy, our character here, has moved away from his hometown in Texas, and he's been living in Los Angeles. He's a writer. He's a working writer, and he flies back home because his brother dies. And he finds out that his brother didn't just die, his brother was murdered. And he thinks that this man in this pickup truck coming to meet him is the man who killed his brother, who's sort of a drug lord of sorts in the county. So that's essentially what the panels are. So he's essentially meeting this bad guy of sorts.
Now,
that's why we wanted to build it up that way. You know, it's a sort of slow build up between the panels of, you know, who is this guy? It's, you know, you don't see who's in the truck and you don't even see you just see the feet when they come out.
That's
great.
To
build them up. So
that is a great moment. I love just there's so much suspense. Just like you have to turn this page in order to find out who the heck is standing right there. This just feels beautiful and cinematic and very well done. I really enjoyed this when I was reading it.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, let me get to the next page here. And then we meet the guy. I forget his name.
His name is Kuttner.
Yes.
Which is the name of a substitute teacher I had in middle school.
Oh boy.
I just liked his name.
Kuttner. Oh,
I liked his name. I thought it sounded like a badass name, so I borrowed it.
Now the character design feels like really good. Like you just want to punch this, you just want to like punch this guy. I feel like you just feel like he needs to be put in his place. Beautiful.
Well, that's all Jacob. I mean, I said, you know, he's got, you know, long hair, beard, bolo tie, Western shirt, but Jacob, you know, he figured it all out, how to make it work, you know, because I can put words on a page, but that's only going so far. You know, it's really, you know, it's essentially, I feel like it's like I build an engine and then he puts it in the car and gets it moving, you know. That's how I feel about it. And I feel that way about so much of this. I mean, not to maybe this will get people excited for our next arc, which comes in on June 30th.
Oh yeah.
But it's there's a character in that named Eversol who comes in, and I have been writing this character for a very long time. He's appeared in other stuff that I've done, and so I'm very much a Stephen King fan, so I like the sort of extended universe of things.
Mm-hmm.
So he had appeared in other stories, and I've always just imagined him a very particular way. And Jacob initially started drawing him the way that I had done him, and then thought, no, I'm going to do him this other way. And once he sent me that thing, I said, well, now we should also give him, this, so we just sort of built on top of it, because we're both so similar in terms of our thinking, that it's very much a collaborative. Yeah, it's very much a collaboration on pretty much everything that we're doing, and we barely, I think, disagree. The only thing that I think that we sort of kind of disagreed on was there was a possible alternate cover for issue 1, when Jacob got cold feet about the cover that he'd come up with, and I was like, well, I kind of like the other one, but it works, the new one that he did, but we ended up going with the original idea. And I honestly, it is still one of my favorite covers. I think it's a lot of people's favorite cover. That's the issue 1 cover with Joe Bubb sitting on a rock.
Yes,
the most exciting.
Hey, it worked. I think it worked just fine. I'm just curious with this whole layout, seeing as I don't have like the script in front of me. Was this pretty much a same sort of situation where you're almost not to belittle what you're doing, because you're doing a tremendous job of telling the story. But you're almost just giving. I know some artists or some writers, for example, Todd McFarlane. He described that he could literally call his artist on the phone, tell him what he wanted on the page, and that's it. But and then there's artists who are writers who are very, very particular. So I'm curious, with this page, was this sort of how, more like you gave the same sort of direction, or was this would you say these pages were followed to the letter, or sort of given?
So essentially what I again did on these panels is essentially I choose a close up, medium, wide, or whatever. And I choose the number of panels per page, and I describe what's in them. I mean, he sort of will fiddle from here and there. I don't know. I don't have the script in front of me. I can look it up at the moment and just tell you, but I don't know exactly what it was.
No, you don't have to. I don't want to inconvenience.
But I mean, there's certain things, like for example, the last 2 pages that were very particular. Those are definitely written that way.
Which one, so I can pull that up?
The last 2 pages, the last double spread.
This.
Yeah. So this is very much 4 panels, and then the next one's 4 panels. So they're very much supposed to be reflective of each other. The talking scenes are a little more relaxed in terms of what they're showing, just because I feel like we want to get in. We want to just hear the conversation or read the conversation. We don't need to feel any particular thing about it aside from what they're saying. What they're saying is doing the talking, literally. But there's certain pages or panels where I'm very particular about what we're seeing. There's again in issue 7 that's coming out in June. There's a wide shot that's a like overhead helicopter shot of a scene of a crime. That was very particular because everything had to fit, to sort of work into the crime.
Okay, so it varies, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I always describe, like I said, whether it's a close-up, a wide, or whatever. So I'm very particular in that way, but I also leave it up to him to, change it up as he feels necessary. Yeah.
Sweet.
So I mean, I definitely I feel like if I was drawing it, I'd probably do it my way, and it would probably be similar, but it definitely wouldn't have the same vibe as when he does it. He definitely adds his own flair to things.
Cool. But is there any 1 or 2 more pages you think would be interesting to go over?
How I had written it was like a deck of cards being smushed out, and this final panel being like the largest, the closest card to us, and Jacob just couldn't really figure out how to do it in terms of like a deck of cards, so this was his interpretation of it. But again, the images in each panel very much what I had envisioned and written, but again, it's he did his own spin on it just because, you know, he has to draw this stuff. I can write it. He has to draw it. So it wasn't working the way that I had written it in terms of the paneling. So it wound up working perfectly this way. Again, you get the same vibe. You know, it's the same vibe, just different layout.
Yeah, I was curious about this. You don't see this sort of slanted fan effect every day, I'll call it.
I think he was kind of slightly doing what I had written in terms of the
Cards.
sort of the cards fanning out, you know.
Yeah.
So that's probably why it's like that. I don't know exactly, but yeah, I mean, that he has a great visual mind, obviously. He knows what works and what doesn't, and I mean, this is a great example of that. Yeah, we're just again, I'm lucky to have him. Putting a spin on my stuff.
I can appreciate that. I know I was listening to some other interviews you did, and you're a big Shakespeare fan. You're
like Shakespeare,
influenced by the Coen brothers, but I view this, and I don't know if I should give away like the ending, but I won't.
Go ahead. It's been out, so I feel like, you know.
All right, so I guess
I'm also not the biggest person on like spoilers, because it's, you know, even if you know the ending, it doesn't ruin the story for you, because if you're reading a thing and you know the ending, you should be caught up in the characters anyway. It shouldn't be that, which it shouldn't be bogging you down that you know what's going to happen, because I know the ending of Hamlet, you know, I know the ending of, you know, X, but like you know, for example, like, I don't know, any historical movie. I just watched the trial of the Chicago 7. I know how that ends, you know, but I enjoyed the movie. You still you invest in the characters, and if that works, if the story is working, it shouldn't affect, you know, what you're seeing.
Well, you're right. I mean, if people didn't want to know the ending to a movie, they wouldn't rewatch movies. So
exactly,
the movie over and over again. So I can appreciate that. All right. So if you're watching this video right now and you do not want to know the ending, even though Chris is okay with you knowing the ending, stop this video now. You have been warned.
It's your choice.
It is your choice. You can take the red pill or the blue pill. All right. So
exactly.
So we're gonna go to the end over here, and it is just like a horrendous ending where I don't know what page it is exactly, where he finds out that there we go. This is it. Oh, this is a double page spread. Beautiful double page spread. Because so basically he wants to get revenge on his brother's murderer.
Right.
And that
so this is actually the Parker reference.
Parker. Tell me.
So if you go back to the previous page, the
yep.
preview double page spread, there's the couple panels with Randy when he's younger with his brother.
Yeah.
When I had described that to Jacob in the script, it says that it should be like a single color, like the Parker books. So obviously blue in terms of this, and the cream color, like with the Parker pages where they're sort of like a cream color. But yeah.
As a flashback, it works great. Like you could tell this is definitely a flashback, and it's just beautifully done.
Yeah, exactly.
So then he's given back this. Basically, he's going into this bar to go kill the guys who he thinks murdered his brother.
Right.
And I love it. It's just bam, bam, bam. It's great. It says everything it needs to say, and then they're all dead. And then just to fast forward a little bit, we find out that he's not actually the murderer. And to me, or his brother wasn't murdered by the people he thinks. He was murdered by somebody else, who his friend. He was murdered by this girl who's his friend because he was beating her.
Yes.
And that's is that what you meant by this is like a Shakespearean tragedy? Because he could have done nothing, obeyed the law, and she would have been caught, and his brother, he would have had justice.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it was very much a sort of, inspiration from Shakespeare, from Hamlet especially. The Hamlet inspiration goes right down to him seeing his brother's ghost in the first issue of this arc.
I didn't even pick up on that. Yes.
Yeah, so it's it's very much inspired by those sorts of inevitable tragedies that Shakespeare had written, where it's just everything seems to go wrong, and seemingly fated to be that way. So and that's the thing with Randy, is that it almost seems like he was fated to come back here and to just lie himself into this situation where he just is ignoring the facts in front of him that maybe were there, and he's just convinced that this person is the one who did it.
Beautiful.
So
this was beautiful. I love
my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I loved it. You just felt it. Like it wasn't like a sad ending, and like how sad endings are. Like that was a downer. It was just like, you just feel it right here. Randy, if you only you would have. And I think as far as tragedies goes, you nailed it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. For me, it was very much grounded in the scene in issue 4, which has one of my favorite Jacob covers, which is the Simpsons reference. There's a great episode of The Simpsons called Mother Simpson, and it ends with Homer sitting on a car, and there's just like the night sky above of him, and his mother leaves, and that was the reference for the cover, which we've been very vocal about. We haven't hidden that. Jacob and I are both big Simpsons fans. But yeah, so there's that whole issue is essentially Randy's girlfriend's story, right? So essentially what I wanted to do is I wanted to build up the tragedy of their relationship falling apart in the next issue, which is when he wakes up, finds out that, I killed this guy in a drunken rage and didn't remember doing it. And then his girlfriend knocks on the door. But I wanted to build up in issue 4 that she cares about him, and she's going there to try to take care of him, because that's what you do when you're in a relationship with somebody. You love them. You try to do everything you can for them. And he pushes her away and ruins their relationship, because he's fallen down this hole. But yeah, issue 4 is the crux of the story for me, in terms of writing it. That was the one that really made it. That was the one where when you're rolling down a hill and you're hitting the speed where you can't give up. You need to, like, basically, if you're like on a skateboard and you're going down a hill, you need to commit, right? And so at that point, Randy had done some things and he needed to commit to what he was doing, and it sent him into the spiral that he finds himself in now, where he's now, hypothetically in prison.
Oh, he's definitely going to prison. Now, I do want to ask you one question. When I was reading this, I want to find this scene right here.
Yes.
Who is this man? Who is this fellow? Who is this businessman?
So
you just meet him. Who is he?
So his name is, essentially he's the actual drug kingpin of West Texas. But he is also, he's also the West Texas above ground pool king, which is what I thought would be a great front, and also just a very particular title. He's very much obsessed with the king of rock and roll, Elvis. He sort of emulates him, and he couldn't become him being from West Texas unless if he was involved in the drug trade. Or struck oil, but he never was able to do that. So he funneled what he could into making a bit like a legitimate business, but he's in charge of the drug trade in that county. And he'll come back into play later on. We have stories planned for him, but yeah, that's essentially this guy. So this is who Kuttner was essentially working for. So Kuttner was the head of his little clan, but they really answered to this guy. That's where this is where they got their their stuff from this guy.
Got it.
And so this character here who's sitting in the chair, Dan, he's trying to now, being the only survivor of the clan, trying to horn in on the business and say, hey, I can take care of this stuff for you.
Why did Randy
obviously doesn't work out?
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, I guess that's such a brutal line, man. That is such. I've made a hell of a mess. That is brutal. That is brutal. I love it. Well written.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm curious now. Why does Randy give the money back? And why? And then
it doesn't matter to him. It doesn't matter to him. What mattered to him
how much money is
it? It's under 40,000.
Okay.
Because I'm assuming that he had spent some. Randy's brother had spent some money. Travis. So that essentially that's the that's like the thing, is that he throws the money back at him and then kills him, because the guy Kuttner was like trying to say, hey, like, where's the money? And Randy's like, I don't know anything about your money, and then he beats the crap out of him, and then Randy eventually throws the money back in his face, proving that he doesn't give two flying F's about what this man says.
Got it. So it's about repent. It's about here's what you say my brother owed you. Now you have it back, and now I'm going to take something from you. So beautifully, very, very poetic.
It's something that, I mean, if I was mad at somebody, I would try to do like a similar thing. I mean, I wouldn't obviously kill them, but I would like, throw whatever it was that they cared about back at them, So I don't know. I'm glad it worked for you. It worked for me.
It was, I think this just like sums it all up right here, where they can't even talk to each other.
Yeah.
And it's just, now you were talking a lot about the covers, and you there's a cover gallery back here. Would you, now just for reference, because you were mentioning certain covers, I didn't remember all of them, but I know you have a cover gallery back here. So would you mind talking us through like what your thinking was when when you were designing or when you guys were working together to come up with these?
So for the Sean Phillips variant, we had no say. Essentially, we let him do whatever he wanted. Same thing with the Duncan Fegredo cover for issue 2. We just let him do whatever he wanted, because they're obviously Sean Phillips and Duncan Fegredo.
Okay.
But for the issue 1 cover, I had a concept of Joe Bob's. So essentially, that Jacob's interpretation is much more of a McGinnis sort of pulpy cover. I had read something that a plain white background is an attention-getting cover in a comic book store, and that's what you want for an issue 1, especially, is to try to get people's attention. So my idea was a white background, no red. This was all Jacob's invention. But what I had said was that Joe Bob's sitting. He's covered in blood, and he's holding his gun, and he's looking very dejected and contemplative. And so Jacob did that, and again sort of put it through that McGinnis lens and made it a more pulpy cover and gave it the background, but took away the ground. So the ground is blank, which I think makes for an excellent cover. It's a really smart composition, and I love it. And he also worked in his trademark sort of scratchy colors into the background, which is a thing that I love that he does throughout the series. Is this sort of, I say that it's almost like a picket fence that has the paint scratched off of it. I feel like that's the sort of look that it is. It gives it almost like a rustic, sort of earthy, lived in feel, which I love.
I think that's awesome. I think if you would have asked me like what my interpretation of this white ground is, it would have been like, maybe it's a metaphor for uncharted territory. And you don't know you don't know what's going to happen on this journey, because there is no map to follow. We're making it up as we go along.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that works. That works for me. I had him in a white void essentially of just. So it was essentially, it was like, okay, he's in his mind, right? Like that's what we're saying essentially in that. So this could be an interpretation of that. Sure.
I dig it. Okay, so now this was a variant cover by Sean Phillips.
Yep. Great cover. It confused people because I think that they thought it was like more of a horror book. There are definitely horror tinges in the stories. There's definitely underlying sort of dread throughout, which is on purpose, and we're getting there. Issues 7 through 12 involve a cult that worships a deity. So, we're getting a little bit more of the horror stuff in it, which will be cool. Still crime, but still getting a little bit more of the horror stuff. So that's really cool to sort of explore with Jacob. And also just in terms of the writing of it, it's really fun to write. But yeah, so that this is, I mean, I like the cover a lot. It's just, it's definitely his own thing, which is what you want from variant covers.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Now this was the original?
This is the issue 2 cover, which is also the cover of our trade. It's Jacob's favorite composition, I think, and that's why it was on the trade cover. So my concept originally, which I ended every issue of the first arc. We didn't do this with the current arc that we're writing, or that I'm writing, just because we're sort of bouncing ideas back and forth. We're basing the next arc covers off of classic paintings. So we have like an American Gothic painting, and we have a Norman Rockwell painting, and so it's really cool. But for this one, I said that it was essentially, there was very much like this, like a zombie sort of thing. But I believe the original idea was Randy, something close to this, where it was very much like he was in front of this sign for Ambrose County. There was blood on it, and his brother was a corpse, kind of thing. Definitely not exactly the composition that Jacob did. This is all Jacob. In terms of, I don't think it was a close-up of hands. I think it might have been something more of like coming out of the ground or something. I don't know, but it ended up working amazingly well in this. I almost feel like this looks like a Hardy Boys sort of cover, but the idea was essentially that it's like, play up certain aspects of things. So we don't actually have a zombie in it, but it looks like a zombie's hands are coming for Randy, so it's like story-wise it works.
Yeah, that's cool. So this is a variant.
So this is Duncan Negredo, who you might know from the great Hellboy arc of Darkness Calls and the Wild Hunt. Also Enigma with Peter Milligan. A great artist, fantastic artist. I had actually worked with him previously. He had done a poster for a short film that I made called Thesis in 2016. The film that I mentioned before. I had emailed him out of the blue somewhere. I don't know where I got his email, but I got his email, and I emailed him and asked him if he would be willing to do a poster for me. I sent him the movie, said, if you like it, maybe you'd want to do it. And he said that he loved it. And then just, we had been friendly since then, but Jacob also knows him. Had nothing to do with us getting together for the comic, but he also knows him. They're family friends, Sean Phillips and Duncan Figueredo, so it just ended up working out. Jacob actually is the one who recommended him for it, and I said, oh yeah, no, I love Duncan Figueredo, which I do, and I actually have the original artwork right over here on my wall.
That is awesome.
It's fantastic.
Now This is actually a scene from the comic book, because there's a point where he goes, oh look, the buzzards are circling already.
Mm-hmm. Which is very much how it was written in the original screenplay. So there's stuff that survives from that screenplay, although it's sort of the second arc is an amalgamation of like 6 different versions of it. But that was very much the opening. It always remained. It was essentially we start off in like a wide of the, or it's like a low angle of a sheriff and deputies, and they're looking down at something, and then we pull back, and as we're pulling back, we see like a hand like reaching up, and it's revealed to be a corpse, what they're looking at.
It had like rear quarters, I think.
Yeah, so it's very cool to see that come to life, especially in a Duncan Fegredo piece.
Yeah, beautifully done. Now this is issue 3. Now there's how many issues there? You said 6.
There's 6 in this arc, yeah.
Yeah.
In this trade. So this is issue 3. Again, I probably said something along the lines of, I don't know, Randy's glasses on the ground, something like that. And Jacob again just knocked it out of the park. I love especially his composition here in terms of the extreme close-up where the glasses are cut off so you don't get the whole image of the glasses. And I love that you see Kuttner and his lackeys with blood spewed in front of them.
Yeah, not
very much cool cover. So this is the Simpsons one.
Yeah, I love The Simpsons. I'd have to look up that actual episode. You said it's Homer Simpson.
Yeah, so if you look at Mother Simpson,
that's
the name of the episode. Yeah, it's a great episode. It's very much an iconic episode. They were nominated for an Emmy for that episode, I believe. I don't think they won, but they probably should have. But yeah, it's an homage to that because the ending of that episode is a bittersweet ending, and this ending of this issue is very much a bittersweet ending, and that's why I wanted to pay homage to it. And Jacob, obviously, we're both big Simpsons fans, so he was on board. He was like, yeah, and he knocked it out of the park, of course.
Yeah, it looks great. Now this is referring to when he's that one guy, he's like beating the tar out of him.
Yeah. I actually don't know if I had anything to do with this composition, but this is great. And it's actually an accidental reference to Halloween. If you look up 1978's Halloween, there is very much a shot with Michael Myers at the top of the stairs coming down to get Jamie Lee Curtis. It is accidental, but it's fantastic. And again, Jacob knocked it out of the park. I love that it's completely red. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's perfect. Now this one, what's going on here? He seems. This seems almost like. He seems like.
It's more of him giving in, right? So. Essentially, in the first couple pages of this issue, in issue 6, he's sitting in this chair in his living room, and he's looking at this painting on the wall, and so it's sort of he's more withdrawn and sort of lost in the haze of this, alcohol and just everything that's going on around him, breaking up with his girlfriend, and his brother's dead and he's just killed somebody and all this. So he's sort of in this haze, and so that's essentially what is being shown on this cover here. But yeah, there's also this black cat which shows up in the issue. A little on the nose, but I was the one who said that to Jacob. But again, he kills it with the composition.
I just noticed the feet. I just noticed the bloody feet.
Yeah, I'm not sure that was. Yeah, I'm not sure that was my contribution. That might have just been Jacob in drawing it. But yeah, everything that we do together, it's essentially like I'll have like a nugget of an idea, and then like so it's like basically I'll like throw him a pitch and he'll just knock it out of the park, right? So it's like the pitch might have been good, it might have been down the center, but he knocks it out of the park. Like that's essentially our collaboration.
Okay, so that makes sense because he's the last. So that was the last episode, or that was the last issue.
Yeah,
and then
and that's the Ambrose County logo, which is a fake place. My girlfriend actually, so on our Big Cartel store, which you can search Big Cartel, that Texas Blood.
Yes, I'll put the link in the description.
We do have a tote bag. I have several. So basically, Jacob does the UK and Europe sales, and then I do stuff here. in the States and in Canada, and I have a few left here. But we have a tote bag that has the Ambrose County logo on, and on the opposite side has the Texas Blood logo. Almost looks like it was splattered in blood on it. A little gross, but it's cool. But the Ambrose County logo, my girlfriend was actually using the tote bag as like a grocery bag. She was at the store, and somebody came up to her and was like, "Hey, I used to spend a lot of time in Texas. Ambrose County, great place." Doesn't exist, but it's nice that people think that it exists. It's fun.
Oh boy, he couldn't chat her up,
but yeah,
could he? He tried.
Essentially, yeah. So there's a lot of literary references throughout. So like Ambrose County, Ambrose is named after Ambrose Bierce, the great American author. Fort LaHaine is the name of the one town where Joe Bob lives, and LaHaine is based off of Dennis LaHaine, who was a great crime novelist. There's all these sorts of names or what all the towns are based off of. So there's a town called Lawrence, and there is a town called Lawrence in, or a county called Lawrence in Texas in actual fact. However, it's not meant to be that one. I know that caused some grief in terms of some people going, well, that's not what it's like. But it wasn't meant to be that. It was meant to be. I was just referencing a writer. Same thing with Irving, Texas, was named after Washington Irving, who wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. Benchley, the name of the bad guy at the end there with all this stuff, his name is taken from Peter Benchley, who wrote Jaws. Lots of those sorts of references are what I try to work in everything. The name of the hotel that Randy's staying at is the Belasco, which is the name of the house in Hell House. So there's which is a great Richard Matheson novel, Legend of Hell House. Great movie as well. But yeah, so there's all sorts of these references. I mean, I'm paying homage. Sometimes I don't like when I read stuff like that, so I try to make it more, out there, so people might not get the references on firsthand. But I love that stuff. I love when like you eventually find out and you're like, oh, that's awesome. There's a university called Mackin University, which is Arthur Mackin, who is a great writer.
Just real quick, because I know we're getting late here, but I just want to hear what is the next arc going to be, and when does it come out?
The next story arc is called Eversol 1981. It's set in 1981, and so we're seeing a younger Joe Bob deal with a cult that has infiltrated Ambrose County, and the Eversol is a private detective who deals in sort of weird things like cults and things like that. And he comes into the county because he knows a little thing about this cult and thinks that he can help Joe Bob and the sheriff at the time, Sam, figure out what's going on and help them solve the mystery. It comes out on June 30th, the first issue. We're very excited about it. It's got a great Jacob Phillips cover, inspired by a Norman Rockwell painting, but it's a really interesting composition, very much unique to Jacob. We have a great variant cover by Mark Aspinall. Most recently, I think his work was featured on a Escape from New York vinyl from Waxwork Records. But it's a really great compliment to the story, his cover. But yeah, it's essentially, it's Joe Bob after the events of the second arc. He's left sort of wondering why so many bad things tend to happen in his county. They're all good people. Why? And so he starts reminiscing about this crime that happened in 1981, the one that kind of set him off thinking this way. And that's what's coming in June 30th.
I'm looking forward to it. I hope everybody is. One last thing before I let you go. What piece of advice would you give those brand new writers who are watching you right now to encourage them as they continue on their comics writing path?
I would say don't give up. I think that is the biggest thing. I had been writing for years and just not been getting anywhere with it, but I liked doing it. I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and if the work is good, keep doing it, and eventually somebody's going to see it and they're going to like it, and that's what it takes. Mainly, I would say just keep working, keep doing the work, and keep sending it out there. Keep putting your work out there. That's really what it takes. And I mean, it's as simple as that. Everything else sort of just comes once it happens, once it clicks, and that's it. So just keep putting the work out there.
I think that was awesome. That was like the best piece. That encouraged me. So thank you.
Do it.
And that even for a YouTube channel, that advice of don't quit is a great.
It's very much true. I mean, and that right down to the comic itself is I was again trying to do it as a short film. It wasn't working. So, when something's not working, you try to figure out a different route, and comics was there. I love comics. I was reading comics. I was thinking, okay, what if we just did that? And we did it and it worked. It's just trying to figure out, the right routes, the right avenues, and just eventually it'll click. It might not go the way that you want it to go initially, but I mean, in terms of our comic, again, I think that this is perfectly it. I don't think that there is any other way for it to exist in this current iteration. I just think that that's the main thing, is just keep doing the work and keep putting in the effort and putting in the time. It is time consuming, and it could be, in certain ways it could be costly. I mean, but just keep doing it and it'll work out. I believe that. I really do.
Well, from one New Jersey person, one New Jersey boy to the other, it's taken to heart, my friend. Hey, I know it's getting late. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. You have been more than generous with your time. Thank you so much for letting us look through your comic, like panel by panel. Like, people are gonna love this. I just know it, because we don't get this chance every day with people like you who are so accomplished to see your comic and panel to panel and page to page. That was so cool. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, yeah. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, I'll contact you afterward when this video is done and posted. Sure. But have a great night. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to corresponding with you. All right, buddy?
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks, buddy. You too. Ciao.
Bye.
And there you have it. I hope you learned a lot about the process of comic book writing. Thank you again to Chris Condon for taking the time to do this interview. If you viewers would like to learn more about That Texas Blood, then check out the links in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for future videos, then please let me know in the comment section down below. If you found this video helpful and you'd like me to keep making more, then please convey that to both me and the YouTube algorithm by hitting like, subscribe, and the bell icon for notifications. If you're interested in watching another helpful video, then check out some of the video suggestions you'll see displayed on the next screen.